Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend with family and friends. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Toledo's virtual meeting, featuring guest speaker Keith Burris, journalist, the election and the press. Here to provide us with today's reflection is Pat Sheehan, and to lead us while we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance is Sam Meldon.
Let's take a moment to pray. Dear God, we come to you offering thanks for our many blessings. We ask that you give our minds some quiet time and peace amid a very noisy season of politics. We thank you for today's message from one of your disciples, Keith Burris. We come to you as a diverse group, and Keith will remind us that there are many ways to seek you, God, and there are many ways to act out our compassion for a better world. Please grant us the patience to listen and wisdom in all that we do. We continue to lift up members of our community that have been severely impacted, directly and indirectly, by COVID-19. Please bless our fellowship today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you, Sam. As we begin our meeting, I'd like to thank and acknowledge DMC Technology Group as our October weekly meeting sponsor. Thank you, Rotarian Pat Sheehan. One of the most important initiatives as we navigate through the pandemic is member engagement. And here to announce a great opportunity for engagement is Maria White, our Member Engagement Chair.
Hello, President Alex and all of our members. I'm very excited to announce that this coming Saturday, October 23rd, we're going to be co-hosting a tailgate at the Toledo Club in the parking lot of the Toledo Club. So it will be outside, so it will be safe for those of you that are concerned about COVID. You can wear your masks if you'd like. We're going to be showing the Ohio State game and one other game on huge 70-foot screens outdoors. There'll be tables and chairs set up so that we can get together with friends. There will be a safe buffet, so individually wrapped foods for purchase, as well as a cash bar. And please come out at 11 o'clock. So it'll be 11 o'clock until the games are over. And we would love to see many of you there. We will also be meeting some of our friends from the Toledo Club. So it'll be a great opportunity for you to meet some new friends and see some old friends that we haven't had a chance to see in a little while. And we're also co-hosting this with the Peace Committee. We're going to be doing a fundraiser with a service project with the Peace Committee. President Alex, do you want me to tell you about that, or would you like Kurt Church to tell you about that?
Go ahead, Maria.
So we're going to be basically providing some special things to two organizations that really need our help. The first is gently used professional clothing. So clothing that individuals that are coming back to the workplace that need to do interviewing or need professional clothing. So please bring anything that is gently used or brand new. And then the second thing we're doing is we are helping with providing bedding for twin size beds. So that means that you can bring sheets, you can bring blankets, you can bring pillows, anything that will fit twin size beds. Is there anything, Kurt, that I've forgotten? I know you were there. I saw your face a little bit ago. Did I forget anything? Whoops, can't hear you, Kurt. Unmute.
There, no.
There you go.
Kevin unmuted me. For the bedding, it needs to be new bedding.
Okay, great.
New twin bedding. a bed in a bag type situation, which you can purchase at Walmart or Target, that type of situation for the Let's Build Beds. And these go to children who don't have their own bed themselves. Let's Build Beds builds a frame for them, provides a mattress, and then donations of bedding to give to these children.
Perfect.
And Kurt, what time will they be there to accept the donations, please?
They'll be there at 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock.
Okay, so that's when they can drop off the donations. Needs to be between those hours. Thank
11
you.
and 2. Yeah. And also Mary just reminded me that Saturday is the 24th, not the 23rd. I'm sorry about that. So it is Saturday, the 24th from 11 o'clock until the games are over.
And Pastor Cedric Brock from the Mount Nebo Baptist Church will be there to accept. And then Charlene Schumacher from Let's Build Beds will be there to accept the bedding. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it, President Alex.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you, Kurt. What a fantastic opportunity for everybody to get together outdoors, practicing safe distancing with masks, etc. Just a couple of quick updates. I'd like to thank everybody who contributed to the Polio Plus Fund this past week, and for those who participated in the District Celebrity Chef Dinner for Polio. The meal was absolutely fantastic, and hopefully a few of you had a chance to enjoy that. I also want to address another engagement opportunity, which is coming up Wednesday, October 28th from 8 a.m. till 9:30. We're having a fall social at the downtown Toledo Metro Park Middle Grounds. This was our 2012 Centennial project made possible by the amazing support of you, our members, when we raised more than $450,000 and donated $300,000 to the Metro Parks for the beautiful downtown park. On the 28th, come down for donuts and donuts from Toledo Donuts and hot cider right out of a fire truck, dispensed by our own Kevin Mullen. Now, only Kevin would buy a fire truck to socialize. Kevin called it Ladder 419. Most of you have heard of it. Usually it's filled with beer, but it'll be filled with cider. Just normal cider on the 28th. Show up between 8 and 9:30. We've also asked Rotarian Dave Zink to give us a 10-minute update about what's happening with the Metro Parks. Again, we're getting outside at the Metro Parks. Donuts, coffee, and cider for all who show up. I hope to see you there. And now, as we continue our tour of the club service committees, I'll invite Heather Carnes, Vocational Services Committee Chair, to discuss all the great things the Vocational Service Committee is doing.
It's been my privilege to begin this year as chair of the Vocational Services Committee. I had the opportunity to start in service last year. Kurt Church was chair and I was vice chair. So I had a great mentor and somebody to follow. David Tice is our vice chair and our board liaison is John Romer. And I just wanted to go over the committee focus because I think it's been a really great way to see, I guess, the breadth of the involvement the committee can have. The role of the Vocational Services Committee is to offer Rotary support and resources to aid our Toledo community with work and career plans, but this isn't just focused on professional work. This isn't just focused on those who want to go to college. This is focused on work, the world of work and whatever that means for an individual. So through the Vocational Services Committee, we are focused on work issues as it relates to all sectors. Some of the initiatives and opportunities that happen through the Vocational Services Committee are, of course, the grant awards. And as all of you who serve on committees know, and all of you who are in Rotary know, the grant awards are some of the most influential and impactful aspects of what Rotary does. We also have the Interact and Young Men of Excellence career interviews. And I think they may be called something else in a more succinct fashion, but that was the best way that I could come up with to explain it. Those typically happen in the spring, but I'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a minute. And then the four-way speech contest. So to go over just a bit more about each of those, the grant awarding process, as we just talked about, is really important to Rotary and its mission. And through the Vocational Services Committee, one grant that we were able to award last year was the Mount Nebo Church Interview Closet Award. And Kurt Church just talked about it a second ago, because we had the opportunity to help them build an interview closet and then start to fill the interview closet with resources and interview clothing. They also, most recently at the Foundation Council meeting, we were able to make an award to Her Hub through Inclusive of Women. And that allows for an opportunity to help bridge the networking gap for women of color. And Inclusive of Women through Women of Toledo is putting together a mentoring program designed to pair women with individuals who are already in organizations that are committed to networking, and basically give them a hand up, and then help the women that are involved pay it forward later. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that and talking more about that in the months to come. Just a few photos, and these are courtesy of Kurt Church. Kurt, I didn't ask you if I could use them in advance, but I'm hoping it's okay. So this is just the beginnings of the Mount Nebo work on the interview closet. And they had a lot of renovation to do, definitely some repair work, and then also beginning to gather some clothing. So anything that we are able to help with, as well as community members in general, to give them professional clothing to work with and for their members to work with as they go out on interviews would be appreciated. And if I remember correctly, they have plans to assist with resume writing and interviewing later on. Career exploration and interviews are another aspect, and this is really an opportunity for great member engagement through the Rotary Club. These typically take place in the spring. Of course, last spring, due to the pandemic, we were not able to move forward with our Interact interviews, but we hope to be able to do that this spring. We match students with Rotarians in their career or field of interest. And the two groups that I have had the chance to work with so far are the Young Men of Excellence and the Interact group from St. Francis. So basically, those advisors share with the Rotary Club and with our committee the career aspirations and the careers or fields of interest of the students. And then we do the outreach to our Rotarians and try to match them with someone, match the student with a Rotarian who can give them some advice, offer some direction, perhaps provide some suggested coursework, or put them in touch with individuals in the community who can assist them. We also invite them to attend a Monday Rotary lunch. We also have the four-way speech contest, and this is an opportunity to share Rotary's four-way test, which is it the truth? Is it fair to all? Will it build goodwill and friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? I think as a new Rotarian myself, anytime we have the chance to put the Rotary mission and Rotary vision out there for younger people, it's an opportunity to engage them with the club and let them know the good work we're doing. So for the four-way speech contest, we do outreach to area high schools and ask students to submit videos for evaluation. The Vocational Services Committee then reviews the videos and makes a first, second, and third place choice or selection based on votes. And then the students receive the awards as indicated here, 300, 200, and 100. And then they also have the chance to go on, the first place has the chance to go on to the district level. For the last few years, there have been just a handful of high schools who have provided the information to their students. So we're really looking to expand this as an opportunity this year. Again, it's a way to share more about Rotary's engagement with the community, with area high schools, and also help students understand the impact that Rotary can have. So how can you help? You can continue to give to Rotary, of course. Any donations and contributions go a long way to enhancing the community that we live in, and of course, sharing the Rotary name with the Toledo community. You can join our committee. We would love to have additional perspectives. We actually have a committee meeting following this Monday lunch. So you're welcome to join us. Just stay on the call afterward and we'll be thrown in a room together. When we reach out to you on behalf of the Vocational Services Committee, you can say yes to help with student interviews or to introduce a speaker or provide us with some feedback. All of those are appreciated. And if you have ideas about connecting with supporting Toledoans in any way in the world of work, whether it be an issue that should be addressed through a speaker, members that we should reach out to, students and their career aspirations, or a way that we can create more mentoring opportunities, please share that with us and come join us. We would love to have you involved. As I mentioned, we have a committee meeting after today's lunch meeting, but we also have regular meetings the third Monday of every month. If it's on a holiday, we will meet on the second Monday of the month. If interested, just reach out to me. I'm easily reached over email. Certainly phone is an option as well through the Rotary directory. And we just look forward to more Rotarians becoming involved. If you're not on a service committee yet, please consider vocational services. We do great work and we're looking forward to doing more. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Heather, for the tour of the Vocational Services Committee. I hope this has inspired some of you to join this committee or any one of our service committees for that matter. And finally, here to introduce today's speaker is Rotarian and chair of our program committee, Bob Savage.
So I have the pleasure today of introducing Keith Burris. Most of you, I believe, know of Keith, who is the current executive editor of both the Toledo Blade and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I believe he may be news editor in Pittsburgh as well. Keith grew up in Conshohocken, Ohio, which is about halfway between Newark and Canton, and its own Three Rivers city. Graduated from Kent State, studying political science and history, and holds his master's and Ph.D. from the University of Pittsburgh in political philosophy. So good background for what he ended up doing. He had, prior to working in Pittsburgh and Toledo, he worked in Winston-Salem, Hartford, and Manchester, Connecticut, where he editorial director for the journal Inquirer for 20 years. He has also taught at Penn State, Washington and Jefferson, and Trinity College, among others. And interesting, I think, for us to hear from Keith for a couple of reasons, and not the least of which is in the news industry. It's been changing, and as he says, chaotic. There are portions of the internet that have certainly crowded out serious publications. And as he says, papers are here for us to learn, both in the traditional paper and the digital format. He is big on separating news and opinion, says that opinion masquerading as analysis belongs on the opinion page, not in the news page. I think he has some refreshing ideas to bring to perspective, and I assume many of you read them fairly frequently. I always, Keith has not been afraid to address issues and look at all sides of a problem. It's interesting. I think this is a compliment. I have conservative friends who think that Keith is on the far left, and I have liberal friends who think Keith is pretty far right. Probably the truth, I assume, is somewhere in the middle, although I know Keith a little bit. I won't pretend to know him anywhere near that well, but I think he does a good job of giving pretty balanced perspectives. And actually, one of the best pieces I ever heard Keith, actually I heard him read it, was a eulogy he gave for a community leader that was thoughtful, personal, respectful of all religions attending in the crowd, and ever intelligently delivered. Former colleagues, including one of our own Rotarians, who said that Keith is a consummate journalist, and another longtime co-worker of Keith's, said Keith is a decent, thoughtful journalist who tries to bring out the best all of us. And with that, please give a warm Rotary welcome to Keith Burris.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Bob. That's way too kind. If everyone can hear me and see me in the way that you want to, I'll just plow in. I thought what I would do is give you a lot of material, a lot of things to talk about, and then leave enough time for the Q&As that we could sort of mix it up. My topic is I'm going to try to sort of handicap the election and the two candidates really, and the performance of the press in the election. I'm going to try to be very clinical, but this is necessarily, I'm an opinion writer, and necessarily a fair amount of this is subjective judgment. Let's start with President Trump. What's the case for President Trump's reelection? It's the case he's not making. The president's opponents would make this an election about personality, and apparently he would too, to his detriment. The case for Trump is not his personality, but his record. He's renegotiated trade deals as he said he would do. He's appointed conservative judges as he said he would do. He's extricated us from some very long-standing, difficult, and not very fruitful foreign entanglements, which he said he would do. And he's given us the first breakthrough in the Middle East in probably 3 generations. A pretty clever, and we'll see if it's fruitful over time, but a pretty clever approach to the Middle East problem, for which he's received virtually no plaudits and very little attention. I think the other case you can make for Donald Trump, there are 2 more. One is that he has empowered a certain kind of person, the person that Hillary Clinton called the deplorables. But guess what? Not every person who voted for Donald Trump 4 years ago or will vote for him this time is a racist or a homophobe or a this or that, whatever epithet you want to use. There is a Trump voter who is epitomized by the underemployed Appalachian and the hourly worker in the Middle West who is not doing very well and hasn't been doing very well since the first great trade agreements under Bill Clinton. So that person is empowered by Mr. Trump. That's a forgotten person, as many people of color are forgotten persons in the United States. And to those people, to the underemployed Appalachian making less money than he did 30 years ago, he is as much a hero as Barack Obama was to the forgotten people that he spoke to. So I think there's something to be said for the way in which he has reached out to a part of America that really was forgotten. The media doesn't like to look at that. My colleagues don't like to look at that, but that's a big part of the Trump phenomenon that we as journalists ought to be trying to understand. And then I think the final case for Trump is the social issues. If you are pro-police, pro-military, anti-abortion, Trump has appropriated the cultural issues, the important cultural issues of the right. He's a curious person to be champion of those issues, but it's happened nonetheless, mostly because the Democratic Party has abandoned those issues and the people who care about them. So what's the case for Biden? Again, it has to do with personality and not issues. So just as Trump should have run on issues, Biden has chosen not to run on issues. I mean, he talks about issues, certainly, yes, and there is a Democratic platform, but the basic appeal is, I am not Trump. And what does that mean? Well, I think the appeal that Biden is making is as follows: decency, respect for people and for norms, compassion in the office and the person of the president, and professional government. I think that Biden, for the people who like him and believe in him, I think he epitomizes decency, just as Mr. Trump, in their minds, epitomizes indecency. He's respectful of people individually and of people generally. He respects the norms of Washington that Mr. Trump gives the back of his hand to. He's compassionate based on some of the tragedies that he's undergone, and so he's able to connect with people on that very personal level. And I think a big part of what Biden is saying is, this is going to be a restoration. We're going to have professionals in government. There is a permanent political class in Washington. There is a deep state. The other word for that deep state is people who understand government and know what they're doing. I'm thinking of someone like Robert Gates, the former Secretary of Defense, or James Mattis, another former Secretary of Defense, or Dr. Fauci, or General Kelly, who was briefly Mr. Trump's chief of staff. In Donald Trump, you have a guy who says nothing's been working in Washington for a long time, and so these people who are the pros at government, the argument is basically the government's too important to leave to the professionals. And the counter argument is it's too important and too complicated to not leave to the professionals. At least you ought to depend on them for intelligence or science. So I think that's a big part of the Biden appeal, and perhaps the most compelling part of it, substantively. I think the downside to Mr. Trump is obvious to everyone. It's his personal instability. It's the way in which his personal instability injects itself into the workings of government. And it's not just a sort of nasty or combative streak, but an inability to understand that the president is the head of state as well as the head of government. He doesn't get that. You ask yourself, think about Ronald Reagan giving the speech, the tribute he gave to the astronauts when they were lost in space, when we had the casualties all those years ago during the Reagan administration, and the way that Reagan spoke to the nation as a sort of father figure and head of state. It's not something Mr. Trump is capable of doing, and he hasn't been able to do that during the COVID crisis. The downside to Biden is obviously a personal fragility, a physical and intellectual fragility. He's perhaps not as fragile as he sometimes appears. But whether he could stand up to what I'll call sort of the woke crowd, whether he can stand up to some forces within the culture, within the left of his own party, that's something a lot of people wonder. I'll just, in sort of part 3, speak very briefly about the role of the press in this campaign. The American press, in my view, and as I say, you can just pick whatever you like from this sort of buffet of thoughts and observations. The American press, in my mind, is destroying itself. Objectivity was never a very realistic goal of journalism, but detachment and fairness and balance those are realistic, and we've abandoned those. We all understand why people in the media have abandoned those standards. Their feeling is Donald Trump is different. He represents an existential threat to the presidency, to the stability of government, perhaps to the Constitution itself, and therefore well-accepted journalistic standards and ethics have to be suspended for the time being. That's sort of the argument of the New York Times. I think we've done that at great peril to ourselves and to the nation, to the citizenry. What we're getting as a result of that sort of collective decision by the press is a lack of digging, a lack of information, a lack of detail. For instance, Amy Coney Barrett, just not a lot of great reporting and information gathering on originalism, for example, what her legal philosophy. We've stopped digging, we stopped reporting because we want to all be pundits. And if you read the leads of the New York Times and the Washington Post on a daily basis, especially where Mr. Trump is concerned, you see how terribly biased they are. They may be right substantively as citizens, but are they right as journalists? I would point to the Savannah Guthrie questioning of President Trump the other night. That was fine if we'd had the same thing in the Stephanopoulos questioning of Biden, but we have a media that has taken a side and I think has sacrificed its credibility in doing so. So I come back to that little thing Bob mentioned in the introduction. Analysis, so-called, belongs somewhere other than the front page, because analysis is at best one step from pure opinion, and often these days not even one step. So I think the press has in its desire to take a side, to redefine its own role as analysts and commentators rather than reporters, and its complete lack of shame about its own lack of balance and detachment. The press, I think, has failed the country miserably this year and hurt itself terribly. So those are just some ideas I would throw out to you, and we can talk about. I didn't talk about the horse race at all. I don't think that's terribly useful, but if you want to talk about it, that's fine. I just throw out these thoughts as things that you might pluck 1 or 2 or 3 of them as things you'd like to follow up on.
So Sam, we will start with you, and you are up.
Well, Keith, thanks so much for being here. Good to see you again, even if at an odd angle on a screen. I had a question for you, and I think that Bob's introduction was really, really on point, that you have a respected and credible way of talking about these issues. And so I genuinely am curious about your perspective on this notion of what I call like the both sides problem, which is, it is obviously true that everything that happens in this divided political moment, there are 2 sides of the story, 2 sides of the interpretation. But it is also true that not everyone's an expert. And as you said, this idea of everyone as pundits, I feel like there's this crutch that's being developed where we see something going on in the news, which is more like a 4-hour news cycle, not a 24-hour news cycle. And we just have a reflexive response to say, oh, well, both sides are that way. Both sides, both sides, both sides. And I guess I'm curious what you think about the media's responsibility or role or opportunity even to say, not in an opinion page, but in a factual way. And I'll pick one that's fairly non-threatening. Well, look, in the first presidential debate, it is true. It's not a both sides thing. It is true that one interrupted the other one more. And it's also true that the other one never answered any questions, but it's not actually both sides. I'm just curious what you think about the whole both sides notion, and how do we split that and actually have some facts in the coverage?
Well, I love that question. I think the both sides thing kind of goes back to what we now call the news hour, and was years ago, those of us of a certain age knew it as McNeil-Lehrer. And it's to me, it's classically lazy, bad journalism. If you take a complex issue the issue actually has more than two sides, and then you do the kind of for and against, and both are such such reduced, simplistic approaches, and this whole sort of binary approach that now plagues our politics, where I mean the left is entirely right or the right is entirely right, and there's nothing in between. There's no gray. I think that's a real phenomenon, and we're in these boxes and these teams now where it's unbelievable to me that how we approach COVID is now a left-right thing. Why should that be? Why should it have anything to do with left and right? But then the second thing I'd say in response to you, going back to this sort of the media taking a side, let's say that Trump isn't Adolf Hitler, but let's say he's more comparable to Joe McCarthy. Where did the media fail with Joe McCarthy? It wasn't the lack of commentary. It was he said things that weren't true, that reporters didn't correct. And I think a proper role for the press would be when Trump says, for example, we don't need another piece saying, okay, Trump he's the worst human being. Is not only the worst president, but the worst human being who's ever lived. We don't need another piece like that. But I do think it would be useful when the president says we're turning the corner on COVID, where things are actually getting much better, for, as you said, Sam, facts, for a delineation of what's really happening by the numbers in each state. So you just go to the Center for Disease Control or Johns Hopkins, and the headline doesn't have to be Trump lies again, but you could do a straightforward piece saying the president says the following. What is the evidence for that? And if the evidence is to the contrary, let's look at what we do know. Sure, there are disagreements about many aspects of COVID, but we should be able to say whether more people are getting sick or fewer people are getting sick right now. And the answer is more people are getting sick right now, so the president is incorrect. So I think there's a place for just sort of, I call it straight up, no chaser journalism. The lead doesn't have to begin with emotion or 1,001 violins, but I think we're really failing to do our basic work. I mean, the number of pieces that you read on elections we don't even find out what the numbers were. So-and-so won this primary. What was the percentage and what were the wrong numbers? We don't get that till paragraph 10, till after the jump, if at all. That's a complicated answer to a complicated question, but I do think this binary either or approach is dumb. And I think the press has gotten caught in the emotional binary questions rather than sort of sticking to data. Anyway, that's it.
All right, thank you. Rick Arnos has the next question. Rick, you are up.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I thought your summary there was on strengths and weaknesses of the two candidates, presidential candidates, was really on target. Two questions, I suppose. One, is Trump, with his personality challenges, particularly in a second term, is he potentially someone who could tear down and violate constitutional prerogatives in a way that would be ultimately permanently damaging to this country? Or do you think we have enough strength constitutionally and in the institutions to keep that in check? And two, you're lamenting the press's response and the direction they're headed, but in the same way that Trump may have been a response to Obama, the press now, we have 24/7 news, and we have reporters that want to play gotcha because they want to accelerate their careers. And so, we can bemoan the fact that this is what the press is today, but, unfortunately, is it just going to be smacked down and completely now binary reporting, because the framework, the way that news is delivered is such that it's really not going to be possible to put the genie back in the bottle. And so we are, we're sort of destined. NPR should really be a source that is the way that you would like to see it. But, the 24/7 news may be setting up something that is putting us on a path that is insurmountable, and the press is going to, and all of us are going to pay a huge price. I don't know what your thoughts are on those.
Well, those are great questions too. Let me take the second one first. I do think the genie may be out of the bottle. I think the only way back is to sort of build, person by person, reader by reader, citizen by citizen, a constituency for thoughtfulness. That sounds a little pie in the sky, I suppose. But I don't know any other way other than to sort of give in and say, well, this is it. Tweet nation. And then in my mind, the left and the right, sort of the populist right. I'm not talking about old line conservatives, but I think they're equally abusive of facts and dialogue and sort of what we think of as the democratic conversation. So I think that has to be rebuilt in small venues and piece by piece in local communities. I'll give my optimistic answer. I hear from people all the time, every week, who say, thanks for trying to think this through. Thanks for not having a side. I don't always agree with you by any means, but you seem to be outside of what's going on in journalism right now. And that tells me that there is a constituency, both in politics and in the press, for thoughtfulness, for dialogue, for civility, for fact, for science. Your first question, I think, is harder. The optimistic side of me, and I would say that would be my overall and overwhelming answer, is that the Constitution is strong. We've had bad presidents. many times in America. We've had good presidents who tried to take too much power for themselves and for the presidency. I think the Constitution and our institutions can withstand it. I am disappointed in the institution of the press. I think we have to renew ourselves. But can he do damage? Yes. Permanent constitutional damage, rip the Constitution apart. I don't think so, but I think he can do considerable damage to the, and he already has, to the fabric of American political life and the fabric of American life in general. And I think he can do damage to the government. And I kind of blame us again, because we've focused so much on the personality flaws and or character flaws. But the thing we're missing when we focus on those things is, does this man understand this office and his role? If he could not give the kind of speech Reagan gave that night when the astronauts died, if he cannot comfort the nation, if he cannot unite the nation under any circumstances, in any situation, does he understand his role? Does he understand the office? And I think that's really the bottom line. Lyndon Johnson was not a very nice man. Richard Nixon was not a very nice man. This guy, we see that he's not a very nice man every day, because it's a different kind of world and he's a different kind of president. But that's not the fatal flaw. You could be a good president and not a very nice man, or not a very nice man in parts of yourself. But the question is, does he understand this job? Does he understand what's required of him? Does he understand the nature of the presidency? And I think that it's a more narrow thing than, because if you say, well, he's got some personality quirks, but he's given us some good judges. If you're a conservative, you think Amy Coney Barrett is a pretty impressive person. You can say that outweighs the personality if you think it's just a problem of personality. But I think it's deeper than that.
So Keith, we got a couple questions that have come in through chat, and my guess is this is probably I'm just forecasting that this is going to be a heavy topic for you to cover. So this may be our last question, and for the folks in the waiting, I apologize. But the question came in through chat. Obviously Trump has talked a lot about fake news. So two-part question: is there any news coverage that you believe is fair and accurate right now? And then sort of, to tack on to that, as it relates to newspaper, where do you see newspaper in 10 to 15 years, and how will that fit into news in the future?
Again, great. And as you say, those are big questions. I think the Wall Street Journal is a fine newspaper. I think it keeps its opinion stuff on the opinion pages. The reporting is very much in depth. I think it's an infinitely better newspaper than the Washington Post or the New York Times. Those used to be, when I was a kid, those are the three you kind of looked up to. Probably more the Post than the Times. I think they've compromised themselves horribly. It's not that tough to do. It's not that tough to play it straight and to contain your opinion material to the opinion pages. There are almost no other really fine papers left. I mean, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, for example, is not what it once was, the Chicago Tribune. So I think we're talking about a profession and an industry that has to reinvent itself. And it's sort of like the American car companies, when the quality Japanese cars started to come here, they were resistant at first, and then there was a realization, if we want to compete, we have to change. We may be past that point with newspapers. And that intermingles with the generational and demographic questions. Young people do want information, and they do read, and they are seeking quality information, I believe. They don't look to newspapers, and I don't see a hook unless we start to get back to our roots of just calling balls and strikes. Unless we get back to our roots, I don't see how we reinvent ourselves. And if we don't reinvent ourselves, then we die, and new forms of journalism grow up and replace us.
Excellent, thank you. All right, I'm going to squeeze in one more question. I know President Alex is going to punch me for that one, so we're all going to be quick on this one. Chuck Stocking, you are up. Go ahead with your question.
Okay,
Maybe.
yes, I was very interested in your response there about, you know, as we look at vocational training and working with young people coming up, the big issue is what's your source of news and information? How are you developing your critical thinking skills? And love to have you expand maybe a little bit more on that subject, because so many of them, probably 95% or more, are social media is their primary source of news and information, which is a big problem, I think. But I'm interested in what you have to, what message you would have us carry to these young people who are turning to Rotary as for professional direction in their training for careers.
Well, it's a tough question. I think, again, the only way we bring people back to newspapers is to get back to our roots and the way we used to do it. I'm afraid that many young people have already given up on us. The question is, can we teach critical thinking in schools and colleges? Not PC thinking, but actual critical thinking, independent thinking. And that's pretty tough on the college campus these days for most colleges. And we're not teaching, for example, civics in our high schools. I mean, someone asked me the other day, well, I mean, how often do people in the Congress run for office? No awareness that it's different for the Senate and the House, and certainly no awareness of different functions for the Senate and the House. It's the same kind of problem. We started teaching critical race theory instead of critical thinking in our high schools and colleges. We started teaching various sort of theoretical things in colleges and even high schools instead of, hey, you should know how government works. You should know what a bicameral legislature is or how a bill becomes law. So I think we're so far away from the fundamentals that sustained us, both in the academy and in the newspaper business, that again, we're not serving the country and we're not serving ourselves very well. People are giving up on universities just as they're giving up on newspapers. They're saying, hey, I'm not going to pay $40,000 to take a class online during COVID. I can pay $600 at my local community college. So maybe the market and the failure of some of these new models will drive us back to something a little more foundational.
Excellent. Mr. Burris, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to pass it back to our president, Alex.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Keith, thank you for joining us today and for your insightful presentation. I think we had about 7 other questions lined up, and we could probably be here till 2 o'clock, but that's just not in the cards today. Keith, we'll be sending you a well-known book of Toledo as our gift to you, called Historical Tales of Toledo, authored by past President Clint Mock. And we'll also make a donation to the Polio Plus Fund in your name.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for joining us and a great presentation.
Thanks so much. Be safe, everyone.
Next Monday, October 26th, Curious Arabia, Adolescent Mental Health. Should be an excellent meeting. Today, we have one committee meeting, Vocational Services, directly after this meeting. So please stay on the Zoom call, and someone will move you to a breakout room. Also, don't forget Saturday's tailgate at the Toledo Club. Bring your old business suits that might have shrunk over the years for a great donation to Mount Nebo, and of course, new bed sheets. And finally, Chuck's Chuckles.
Good afternoon. I originally had planned to tell you that these are actual comments written in the actual comment section of actual employer interviews of people that probably didn't get hired by their employer. But I hope Keith is still there, because this stuff's dynamite, Keith. You need to get a pencil and a piece of paper and write these down, because you'll want to work these into a future column. And you don't have a lot of time left to do that because the election is coming up. So here are some references in regards to your least favorite candidate or job interviews in the comments columns. If brains were dynamite, he wouldn't have enough to blow his nose. She couldn't find her way out of a wet paper bag. He couldn't hit the floor if he fell on it. She's knitting with only one needle. He couldn't find his backside with, excuse me, he couldn't find his backside with two hands on a road map. Backside wasn't the original, I changed it. The wheel is spinning, but the hamster is dead. She is a few Brady's short of a bunch. His driveway doesn't quite reach the road. He's about as sharp as a marble, and she only has one oar in the water. So Keith, you're welcome, Keith, and President Alex, there it is.
Oh, Chuck, we can always count on you. Thank you. Okay, that's it for today's meeting. Again, thank you for everybody who joined us, and we'll see you next week. We are adjourned.
Breakout sessions offer the opportunity to network with members from around the world while learning new skill sets.
As Rotary, we have been static for so long, but this is an opportunity for us to vision again and look ahead.
Breakouts are a place to discover the latest ideas and strategies that drive Rotary. As you can see, convention is an excellent opportunity for development.
The new vision statement is something that I will try and introduce at club assembly in 2 weeks at our club, and we will definitely adopt that
Another great place to share your ideas is the social media lounge in the House of Friendship. Stop by to participate in interactive quick chats with new friends or get personalized help for your social media channels to help tell your Rotary story.
At the Rotary International Convention in Taipei.